Dr. Jones is a physics professor emeritus with 20 years experience. He's the co-founder of Scholars for 9/11 Truth and Justice, as well as a co-editor of the Journal of 9/11 Studies. For most of his career, he was known mainly for his work on fusion. In the fall of 2006, amid controversies surrounding his work on the collapse of the trade centers, he was relieved of his teaching duties and placed on paid leave from Brigham Young University. In 2006, he retired from teaching, and he misses teaching and is glad to be here today doing that again. He comes from Utah, where he has a lovely wife. At this point, he now has started the S&J Scientific Company, which is in Utah. So he's published in over 50 peer-reviewed journals, including Scientific American, Nature, which is the premier science journal in which he's been published 3 times, and the Physical Review Letters. So let's welcome Dr. Stephen Jones.
Thanks, Jenna, so much. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here in Sydney, Australia, and a great pleasure to be teaching again. I really do miss teaching. Today, I will approach this as a lecture to a worldwide university. Since I no longer have an active university position, I realize that I miss teaching very much, and so I realize also that as this is videotaped, that this will go out to a worldwide university. So I welcome you as students around the world, and I will try to treat this somewhat as a lecture that I would give, perhaps a last lecture, you know, in a series of other lectures. And today we'll be talking about World Trade Center destruction, the destruction on 9/11 that occurred at the World Trade Center, as everyone in the world, I think, is aware of that. We'll look at some behind-the-scenes events that not so many are aware of, that people tend to shy away from, but we'll confront this as good, inquisitive, critical thinking students, and we will seize the bull by the horns and see what really happened on 9/11. That's our goal. Now, there's so much to cover in this field. I will treat these 3 topics and throw in a few extras for you. But the fact is that in order to cover all of 9/11 research, now there's so many researchers, very good researchers and qualified around the world, that I have to assign some homework. And in fact, I hope many of you have already read some of these peer-reviewed papers. Otherwise, and let me put it more positively, as you read the peer-reviewed papers, it prepares you for understanding and sorting out the facts from the fiction. There's all sorts of fiction regarding 9/11, and there are facts as well. Now, you know, as we look at science, peer-reviewed papers are basically a final step in the process of research. Not a completely final step, because then other scientists can read the paper, see what you've done, attempt to repeat the experiment, for example, write a rebuttal paper. This is very common in science. And I welcome this, because then it gives us a chance to say, well, maybe I did something wrong, we'll check. And this is the case. I actually issue a challenge to scientists throughout the world to read these 3 peer-reviewed papers in established journals, and a 4th that I'll mention, and rebut what is written here. See? That's the challenge. Now, I will discuss some things then that are contained in these papers. And so, if you haven't done your homework, please make note of these papers. You can go to the Journal of 9/11 Studies, which is listed here at the top, Journal of 9/11studies.com, all one word. And that way you can link to these 3 very important papers and the 4th. Now, let me just tantalize you a little bit, hopefully, from this 14 points paper. In this paper, I quote a letter from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is under the Department of Commerce in the United States. And NIST was charged by Congress to do a study, a detailed study of the collapse of the towers, the World Trade Center towers, as well as World Trade Center Building 7. And in the letter, in this paper, I quote from a letter from NIST, and I just want to quote that here. It's at the top of the screen. NIST wrote to me and my colleagues, "This letter is in response to your April 12, 2007 request for correction, which is a formal procedure saying, NIST, you made some errors. We need you to correct these. Answer us, please." They provided some answers, but then amongst those few answers, they admitted, "We are unable to provide a full explanation of the total collapse," referring to the World Trade Center towers. Now, you may not have heard that in the mainstream media. The fact is, NIST admits that they were unable to provide a full explanation of the collapse of these towers. This admission, after publishing some 10,000 pages on the subject, and then they admit they're unable to provide a full explanation. So please read the paper, and I'll talk about some of these weaknesses in the NIST argument as we go along. This is the fourth paper that I would ask you to read. 3 in established journals. This one is in the Journal of 9/11 Studies. I don't claim that it's an established journal, but it certainly was a peer-reviewed paper. This is the first paper that I wrote on the subject of 9/11. It's probably fair to say that this paper, as well as outspokenness on related subjects, cost me my career. And so please take half an hour and read the paper. Okay? All right. This is part of the homework assignment. Why indeed did the World Trade Center buildings completely collapse? Lots of pictures and background material. I will not be able to cover all that's in this paper or these other 3 papers today. In The Environmentalist, Kevin Ryan, James Gurley, and myself, Kevin is the first author, published a paper, Environmental Anomalies at the World Trade Center, Evidence for Energetic Materials. By this we mean pyrotechnic or explosive materials. At this time we had considerable evidence building, and this is in the Environmentalist, a very well-respected, peer-reviewed journal, and available, I'm sure, at all universities around the world. Should be available easily. Finally, in the Open Chemical Physics Journal, our latest paper, Professor Niels Harrit, Department of Chemistry, University of Copenhagen in Denmark. Active thermitic materials discovered in dust from the 9/11 World Trade Center catastrophe. Required reading. This will be on the exam, I assure you, the material from this. All right. All right. Now, I want to go back several years to 1986. One of my first papers in a peer-reviewed established journal, this in the Physical Review Letters, a premier journal in physics, in which I was talking about muon-catalyzed fusion. Here we made several claims. These were unexpected observations. The same sort of thing with World Trade Center 7 and the towers. That is, as we make observations, we find unexpected results and events and phenomena that then challenge our ability to explain and to account for. And this particular paper was challenged in other peer-reviewed publications, but our paper here, the major claims, were confirmed finally in other experiments. So we expect some challenge, and that's the way science proceeds. So far, the papers that I'm discussing today, the 3 papers published in peer-reviewed, established journals, have not been challenged. Now, I had a comment at lunch. Someone was saying, okay, I'm having trouble getting people to even look at the data. These are serious scientific types. And my recommendation to him was that he point out that there are these peer-reviewed journal articles. In fact, give him one or two of these to read and ask him to respond, because that's the way science proceeds. It's basically a filter, this peer review process, so that you have all sorts of good ideas and nonsense hitting this peer review filter. What gets through and is published in established journals is considered to be serious and worth looking at. And you may even have to remind a scientist of that if the title of the paper has something to do with active thermitic materials, but this is a very serious paper. And it took months to study this, as well as to get it through the peer review process. Okay, so far no challenges yet, no peer-reviewed papers challenging any of these three papers. I'd like to mention also, by way of introduction, a paper in Nature, April 1989. This paper, along with a paper by Pons and Fleischmann, which was, their paper was quite well refuted actually. I allow research to continue. I look at it, of course. This particular paper claimed neutron production from a DD fusion process. It's not totally unrelated to our topic today, because energy and the quest for oil, for example, is deeply related to, as we shall see, to this whole question of what happened on 9/11. I hope to present a convincing set of evidence for that statement. Anyway, so this is about energy. And we presented this paper in Nature. It went through the peer review process. It was a grueling process, as often peer review is. It was published in April 1989. And I presented results at the American Physical Society meeting that, I believe it was that same month. It was within a month of this publication. It turns out we were right in the sense that other experiments now have been performed and have confirmed our hypothesis at the time, which I've put in quotation marks there. Metals catalyze nuclear fusion, and some metals will enhance fusion more than others. This was really theoretically unexpected at the time. It was a result that we observed and published. It has now been confirmed in experiments in Japan and Europe. A quote here from Zersky et al. From the European Physics Journal, in which they point out that their experiments with accelerators can explain the neutron production rate observed by Jones et al. This is our paper in Nature. And this paper was published in 2004. So it took several years, that's 15 years, to be really established. Hopefully it won't take that long to get results established with respect to 9/11. But the process that I look at as a scientist is that we do experiments, we write a paper, we have colleagues check it, and then submit it to an established journal. They check it through their peer review system. It's anonymous, almost always. The peer review system is anonymous. That is, you don't know who the reviewers are. Sometimes you can guess by how mean they are or something. But then their paper is published. Then others can challenge that if they will. Otherwise, the results stand. And so far, our papers on 9/11 remain unchallenged in the peer-reviewed literature. So I will first talk now about the World Trade Center dust. How can we tell if it's dangerous? We do experiments, of course.